So the key is, especially if you own a business, any business, I don't care if you have a Subway franchise, if you're a business coach, if you are the owner of a professional sports team, any business that you are going to have to make your decisions based on not how you're feeling, but based on what you're committed to. Being present with people and being grateful for where you are, grateful for what you're learning, grateful for what you're experiencing, grateful for the opportunity, all of that can help you get through any challenge or issue that you're faced with. There was a 150-gallon fuel tank kind of next to us and a small fuel cart they were both full, and there was a parking lot behind us and a wall and all this. And I'm hovering the helicopter, and because he had so many hours and he owned helicopters just like mine, I said, do you want the controls? This is common that helicopter pilots pass the controls back and forth to each other. And he said yes, and I turned the controls over to him, and within a quarter of a second, the helicopter tipped back and the tail spun around. The tail hit the 150-gallon fuel tank. Now it happened in a quarter of a second. So all this happened without me knowing it while we were in the helicopter. I just knew that I was going to be dead.
This is Eagle Freedom Presents Showtime.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Here's your host, Destin Rogers.
All right, and welcome to another episode of Eagle Freedom Presents. I am your host, Destin Rogers. Thank you for joining me. And don't forget our mantra here of rise, inspire, and overcome, or real. My guest today has done all of that and more. Before we get to our interview, we want to thank Mad Guz and the Mojos for letting us use their song One Night in Vegas in our podcast. And speaking of Vegas, that happens to be where my guest is from today. But let me tell you a little bit about my guest today. My guest is an Amazon best-selling author, a renowned public speaker, and a leading figure in the direct sales and network marketing industry. He's written 2 books, Beach Money and Better Than Beach Money. His best-selling book, Beach Money, shares his journey from enduring several failed businesses, but he's turned all of that around to achieve financial freedom through network marketing. We're going to listen to him and talk to him about his journey through that. But above that, he is a testament of the power of perseverance, because you need that in the industry, a positive mindset, and the importance of personal relationship building. Beyond his professional success, he has also faced and overcome significant personal challenges, including surviving a helicopter crash. We're going to get into that in this episode of Eagle Freedom Presents as well. And he is a passionate advocate for living a life of freedom, purpose, and gratitude. Would you please welcome from his home in Las Vegas, my good friend, Jordan Adler. Jordan, thank you very much for joining us.
Destin, thanks for having me on the show. It's nice to see you.
And nice to see you too, my friend, and good to have you on. You. Thank you very much for taking some time out of your busy schedule to join us today.
Well, I'm looking forward to having a chat with you.
Well, this is all it's about. This is about chat. This is about real life. You know, what I really like to do, Jordan, is I like to have people start out with giving us some background about them. You know, maybe their family life, you know, where you grew up. Tell us a little bit about your background of your life, and then we can jump into more of the interview.
Yeah, absolutely. So I grew up in the south suburbs of Chicago in a lower middle income family. In fact, my high school about 4 years ago got shut down because of gang violence. It was a 70-year-old high school. When I was there, it was relatively safe area, but it's the south suburbs of Chicago, and my parents they lived very modestly. Myself and my 2 sisters, we grew up in a 1,200 square foot home, and they saved their entire life for us to go to college for 1 year, and then we had to figure out how we were going to pay for the other 3 years. We were required to graduate, and I decided to go to the University of Illinois. Didn't know what my major was going to be. I ended up selecting a major just randomly in landscape architecture because I met some people that I liked that were in that program, and we were having some fun, and as you know, college kids, and so I chose that as my profession, landscape architecture, and I enjoyed school. I ended up right out of college moving to Arizona with a guitar, a suitcase, and $250 that I'd gotten as birthday gifts. And I checked up with an ex-girlfriend from high school for a couple of weeks. I took of that 250, I took 200 of it and bought a motorcycle, an old motorcycle, and went through the remaining 50 bucks real quick. And then we had to figure out a way to get some money. And so we started applying for jobs, and I worked many, many, many jobs over the next 10 years as a draftsman, renting roller skates, working at a gym, multiple jobs. Eventually, I ended up at an airline. I left the career of landscape architecture to get involved with a startup airline. And I was with that airline for 13 years. And we grew from 180 employees when I joined them to over 15,000 employees. And all during this time, I felt wired as an entrepreneur. Like I don't even know where it came from because it wasn't in our family. But my grandfather was an entrepreneur, but I didn't really know that what that was back then. But for whatever reason, I was drawn to wanting to have my own business. And so over the 10 years after I moved to Arizona, while I was working all these random jobs, I was dabbling in different businesses trying to get something started. And I racked up over 10 years, 11 different network marketing companies, lots of traditional little, startup, to try different startup things. And after 10 years, I had zero success, never sold anything, never recruited anybody. And I had racked up $36,000 in credit card debt on 22 credit cards. At the age of 34, I was living in an enclosed garage in a house, and I had two roommates that lived in the house. They paid $200 a month. I paid $200 a month. I didn't have a running vehicle, had a broken down Jeep for a couple of years, and I was 34. And the garage didn't even have carpeting. It was a concrete floor. And then I joined my 12th network marketing company in the early 90s. So I'd been in 11 and never made a penny. Signed up in my 12th company, and by my second year, I was making $200 a month, just under $200 a month. And by the end of my third year, I was making 34,000. Well, actually, on my 40th month, I hit $34,000 in income, and that really sparked my full-time network marketing career for the next till today, which I'm 67.
Well, and
So I've been,
you don't even look close to 67. Just got to throw that out there.
well, I
You don't
feel
even
good. I feel good. I still exercise almost daily, and I try and eat healthy.
well, and that's good. That's really good. Where did the idea, obviously you mentioned that you went through 10 companies before you're starting to see your success in network marketing. But at what point did you actually start looking at the industry and say, there's something here for me? There's something that really attracts me to what this
Yeah.
model has. What was that?
Yeah, yeah. So I was at a garage sale when I was in my very early 20s, and I picked up a book that was 25 cents, and it was called The 10 Napkin Presentations by a guy named Don Faila. Don passed away just a few years ago in his 90s, and this book had been rewritten many times in the course of his life. It had multiple titles, but back then in the 80s, it was called The 10 Napkin Presentations. And it taught me it introduced me to the concept of residual income and leverage. And I'd never heard of those phrases before, never learned about those in high school. And I think at that point, I might have been in college for 1 year. I don't remember. But the idea of getting paid over and over again in a non-linear fashion, work one time, get paid hundreds of times, I liked that idea. It made sense to me. And after doing some research, and back then there weren't that many books written about the topic, but today there are thousands and thousands of books written on that topic. But the idea of getting paid over and over again for leverage, if you don't have a lot of money to invest, which I didn't have any money to invest, you leverage through the work of other people. You can leverage your time or you can leverage your money. If you have $2 million, say you have $1 million and you make an investment that pays you 5%, well, that's going to pay you $50,000 a year without touching your principal. That's how people leverage their money. And they can also leverage their money by buying businesses and hoping that the businesses succeed. There's lots of different ways to do it. I just chose network marketing because I didn't have money to invest, and you can get involved in network marketing on a shoestring, and you put in sweat equity instead of money to build your business.
And what people don't realize is when you started getting into this entrepreneur idea or mindset, when you were working for the airline industry, you actually saw an opportunity there to start doing some training within the industry. Is did that kind of help you as far as when you started really just to develop this? I can make some money by doing some other stuff on the side type of deal.
Well, yeah, I was actually it's interesting you brought that up because I haven't talked about that for a really long time on any podcast, and I've been on a lot of them. I was I- to make extra money, I was doing training. I was looking for ways to things that I learned and knew from the airline industry. I put it into little programs and I trained people, and I never made any money doing it. But then I got a job in the airline as a corporate sales trainer, which is really ridiculous because I'd never had success in sales, but I applied for the job and they gave it to me because I guess they liked me. I don't know. But I got a job as a sales trainer and I did a pretty good job in the airline, but they were paying me under, at that point, I think it was $25,000 a year. And I was training salespeople. I was training our salespeople that were calling on travel agents and cargo shipping companies and different things like that. And I learned training programs that I could teach them. There's programs out there, and I got certified, and then I teach them. And then after doing that for a couple of years, 3 years in the airline, I thought to myself, what if I was training on the outside of the airline and and also selling a product? I went to an event that was $25. I saw it in the newspaper, and it was this guy. Gosh, I can't remember his name right now, but he was really big back then, and he would run sales trainings all across the country, and he touted it as a sales training for $25, and anyone could go to it. And sometimes he'd have 10 people, and sometimes they'd have 100. Well, I went, and what he did is he did a really great 1 hour sales training. And at the end, he offered a product, and it was a network marketing company. I didn't know it at the time. And I never joined his company, but I thought that's really what I want to do because then I could accumulate an income stream. If I can start doing training if I could become a personal development trainer outside of the airline and then have a product that I could offer to everybody after I provide them with a lot of value, then, and some of them may get involved as either distributors or as customers. And over time, I could build up a revenue stream. And so the other thing is I started to learn the concept of leverage in that if I can put in 5 hours a week and I can find one other person that can put in 5 hours a week, I then get to benefit from 10 hours worth of work a week, but I'm only putting in five. And then if I can find a couple other people that can put in 5 hours a week because they want to make their own money, they want their own business, and I help them get started. If I had four people spending 5 hours a week, now I'm benefiting from 20 hours worth of work a week plus my five. So 25 hours worth of work a week, but I'm only putting in five. And I like that idea. It was just an idea for me back then because I'd never had success at it, but I started to pursue that and spend a percentage of my time focused on that type of a business. And I didn't give up on the concept. I gave up on companies over and over again, which didn't work. So I never really made any money. But when I finally figured out quitting is not a good solution, and I aligned myself with the right opportunity, then and I didn't quit. I kept going. Then things started to happen, and I started to get residual checks. And today I've got a very, very, very large residual check that pays me whether I go to work or not. And that's a really good feeling, especially when you start getting up into your late 40s, 50s, and 60s, when you got a nice fat residual check coming into your bank account and you don't have to go to work. That provides you with it's a huge relief. Most people get real stressed out when they're in their 40s and 50s, especially if they're still trading time for money. And then at some point they get panicked. Like in their late 50s, early 60s, they start getting panicked.
Yeah, and you're talking about entrepreneurship, and with everything that is going on in today's world, it's so hard or it's so easy to get depressed, trying to figure out what you want to do. And there's a lot of people now that are seeking and seeing that there is some value in the entrepreneurship. You see it all around. And a lot of people tend to think, well, entrepreneurship, well, that sounds pretty easy. I can just do this and do this. But the reality of being an entrepreneur is you're pretty much relying on yourself. Do you want to touch on just being an entrepreneur itself and what that really means?
Well, even in a business that offers you the opportunity to recruit other people, you get to benefit from their skills and their efforts and all of that. So like in the beginning, you're not very good. Nobody is in the beginning. There's a couple, 2 out of 100 that are wired for entrepreneurship and they just got it, but most people don't. Especially if you came from the job world and you're used to trading time for money. Back in the early 80s, 90% of the population believed that network marketing was a scam, and 10% believed it was legitimate. In fact, if you had a business card back then, I know business cards are viewed a little differently today, but you had a business card back in the 80s, if it had your address on it, people would check the address. There was no internet, they'd drive by. And if it was a house, you were considered a scam. If you had your home address on a card today, it's a feather in your cap to have your home, to work from your home. Everybody wants to work from home. Today, 90% of the population believes that network marketing is legitimate and 10% thinks it's a scam. So it's completely flipped. And with technology today, the ability to work from anywhere and have all these thousands of tools available at your fingertips, of which most of them are free. Um, you know, there's never been a better time to have your own business. And people today, it's a different mindset. Back then, back in the early 80s, the late 70s, people, and even in the 90s, the early 90s, it was kind of like cooler to have a job than it was to have your own business. Today, it's completely. However, one of the things you mentioned, if you start scrolling social media, many people on social media make you think that it's just a piece of cake and anyone can just jump in and start making money right away. And some people do, but it's very rare. Most of the time, you got to pay your dues. You're going to have to work hard. You're going to have to be focused. You're going to have to deal with the ups and the downs. You're going to have to make tough decisions. You're going to have to work harder when things get tough. All those things.
At what point you're starting to see success? At what point do you decide that you're going to write a book? That was never really a
Yeah.
goal when you started out, was to write a book, but you've written a book. How did writing Beach Money come about?
Yeah, it wasn't, Destin, it wasn't a goal at all. I had been doing a weekly conference call for years and years and years. And before I even had a computer, I was handwriting notes on these yellow pages, yellow pads, and then I do the conference call from the notes with my team, and then I would throw them in a box. And so I had this big, heavy box filled with notes from all my conference calls that I'd been doing for many years. And in my 12th company, I started making really good money, and I was, and I had a residual income, but that company went away after it was a 16-year-old company that went away after my 13th year because of massive shifts in technology that happened in the marketplace. We became obsolete. We were a telecom network marketing company. But I had these boxes of notes and I thought about writing a book, but I thought, there are so many one-hit wonders in the network, just like one-hit wonder in musicians. There's people that write one song and it happens to catch on and it takes off and they make money, and then the rest of their life they never can do it again. Well, there's a lot of people like that in network marketing, and I had to prove to myself that I wasn't a one-hit wonder, that I just got lucky. Like I had to prove that I didn't just get lucky by signing up the right person at the right time. So when that company went away, I decided I wasn't going to write my book until I hit $100,000 a month in my second company, which is the company I've been in for 21 years. So when I hit $100,000 a month in my current company in monthly residual income, that's when I took those notes from that box and turned it into a book and called it Beach Money, from a title that it's a long story, but the book itself was Beach Money, but I didn't have a name for it. And I had used the phrase beach money in the 80s to run ads, and I never got great results from any of my ads. But whenever I put beach money on there, I got 20 times as many phone calls from the ad than any other title that I used. And so I realized there was some power in that title, and it tells what it is. Like the just that two-word phrase, beach money, tells you what it is.
Right. And
So
what's interesting about your book is after you've published it, you personally aren't benefiting from the book, correct? You have
no.
designated a nonprofit for the proceeds to go to the nonprofit. Tell us about the nonprofit and what made you decide to that you wanted to do this with the profits from the book.
Yeah, I didn't need the money from the book, but I wanted to have an impact and leave a legacy. And my ex-girlfriend, who I'm still very close to, she she knew that I wanted to have some type of a project that would help entrepreneurs outside of my network marketing business help people start businesses all over the world. Like I wanted to figure out a way to do that. Well, she tripped across an organization called Kiva, Kiva, and their website is kiva.org. And you can go on there, and there's thousands of people that want to start businesses in developing countries, like in the jungle, in villages in South America, and they just want to start a business and they need $50 or they need $150 or they need $500 to buy their supplies, or like somebody wants to start a cleaning business and they need supplies, or somebody who wants to offer a shoe repair business and they need supplies. Somebody wants to open up a farm stand, and these are in villages. These are in some places where they don't even have shoes. And so you go on their website, kiva.org, and there's thousands of people on there that are looking for money. And then there's field partners, and you can loan them the money, and then they use the money. And then as they start making money, they pay you back, and 93% of the loans get paid back, and then you can reloan it back out. You can't take the money out, but you can reloan it out. And you see exactly who the money's going to and what they're using it for. You see their little business plan, you see pictures of them, all of it. And it's really great. Well, we've done I've loaned $350,000. And at one point, I haven't checked recently, but Beach Money, my organization through the book, was the number one of over $1 billion in loans. We were number one as far as an organization loaning money. And we've helped over 10,000 people start businesses all over the world through that.
Well, that's amazing, and that just is just to show the type of person that you are, wanting to give back and see others succeed that are trying to get started. And some people may think, $50 or $100, that they can't do much, but when you're talking about developing countries, that's a whole lot of money in those countries, correct?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In
Yeah.
your books, you often refer to you're an adventure guy. And one of the things you talk about in your books is hang gliding and how you got into hang gliding. And there's a part in Beach Money where you talk about hang gliding. And I just want to read this real quick. Again, this is out of Beach Money. It says, sometimes it would take 30 sweaty minutes of fighting the glider to get to the top of the hill, all while trying not to fall into a jumping cholla cactus. It was hot and grueling. Many weekends I wondered why I was putting myself through this. And that last line about wondering why I was putting myself through this, how many times in your career in doing what you're doing have you thought that same line about why am I doing this? And just the struggles, you're going to go through struggles.
Yeah, you go through that, and we're human beings. We have emotions, and our emotions go up and down, and it's a normal thing to beat yourself up, like everybody does it, and you get down on yourself. It's normal to feel depressed. I mean, that's why there's so many programs out there to help people with depression, because people get depressed, and it's normal. It's normal to doubt. It's normal to question yourself, all those things. And even when you're not, whether you're an entrepreneur or not, and that doesn't change. It never changes. So you're going to go through really high highs and really low lows. And the goal is to not let the highs get too high. You never want to celebrate too much. It's good to celebrate, but you never want to let the lows get too low. And I mean, you know what it feels like. We all do, right? So the key is, especially if you own a business, any business, I don't care if you have a Subway franchise, if you're a business coach, if you are the owner of a professional sports team. Any business that you have, you are going to have to if you want to be successful, you're going to have to make your decisions based on not how you're feeling, but based on what you're committed to. Like, are you committed to your family? Are you committed to being financially free? Are you committed to building a legacy? Whatever it is for you, whatever but you've got to do it from a place of commitment, not from a place of how you're feeling, because we're human, because our emotions go up and down. If you only build your business when you're feeling it, you're never going to make it. Nobody does. You end up quitting. That's why I adopted the saying, never quit on a bad day, because you're going to have bad days. And it's real easy when you're not in it it's real easy when you're not in the midst of it. If you're not in the middle of it, to say, I get it. I'm never going to quit on a bad day. But then when you're having a really bad day, it's too easy to quit.
I just want to jump. You did beach money, and then you decided better than beach money. I mean, people out there go, "Oh, well, what could be better than beach money?" I mean, you've got beach money, but tell us how better than beach money came about and why you wrote that.
Yeah, it was the same thing. It was just more stories. I had collected more stories that I thought could help people and inspire people. And I had the book written. It was the same thing. I had all the pages. It was all written. I had the chapters and everything, but I didn't have a title for it. And I went for a full year trying to figure out what's going to be the title for the second book. And I was up at my place on Mount Charleston, which I've sold, but I was out in the forest, in the mountains at 9,000 feet. A beautiful, beautiful place. And I'm sitting around the fire with some friends, and I tell them, I'm trying to come up with the title for my book. And one guy says, "Well, what's the book about?" And I said, "Well, the only thing I can tell you is it's better than beach money." And I had already gone through like 40 titles, and he goes, "Better than beach money?" I go, "Yep, there it is. There's the title, Better Than Beach Money." I mean, it
Uh,
like fell into my lap
that's
because
awesome.
people ask the question, well, what can be better than beach money? And they want to know. And so they want to read the book. Both books are on Audible. You can get either one of them on Audible, and they're also written. I sat in a studio for 2 days for both books, 2 days each for both books, recording and reading the book from cover to cover. And they're a lot of fun to read. If you haven't read my books, I highly recommend it. They're a lot of fun to read, and you'll get a lot of great, fun stories that'll help you grow your business.
And there really is because I've read the books several times. And speaking of better than beach money, one of the things that people do is they limit themselves, all right? And in Better Than Beach Money, you write that boundaries and limitations are self-imposed. Most of the time, we already know how. It's not the how that is keeping us from getting what we want. It's the imaginary tethers that keep us bound to our past, putting our dreams just out of reach. For a lot of people out there that have dreams, they have goals, they have ambitions, but they're stuck in the tethers. They're stuck in where they've been before. Can you touch a little bit about that and how important that is for them to break those boundaries, break those tethers?
Yeah, it's those conversations we have with ourselves that hold us back. So I used to do an exercise when I was in corporate America where we called it yellow ropes. And I actually have a chapter in the book called Yellow Ropes, where we'd take it would be a group of people and there'd be a lot of observers, but we take 5 people and we put them around the perimeter of the room, and then each person would hold the end of a yellow rope that would be tied to the belt of a guy in the middle of the room. So there'd be a guy in the middle of the room with a belt on, and he had these yellow ropes tied, and each rope would go out to one of the 5 people that's on the perimeter of the room. And then we would blindfold the people that were holding the ropes on the perimeter, and the person in the middle was not blindfolded. And we would put $100 bill on the ground. And the goal, first of all, the number one rule is they're not allowed to talk to each other. That's the only rule. They're not allowed to talk to each other. And so what would happen is the guy with the in the middle of the room that could see the $100 bill on the floor, they can see it. And so we're 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 trying to they're the ones that are holding the ropes that can't see are trying to figure out like how to they're trying to send signals to each other, but they can't talk. And the guy in the middle is trying to figure out how to get to that $100 bill, and the ropes are keeping him from getting there. And eventually we take a break, and I say again, The only rule is you can't talk to each other and go, and then they can't get to it. So then what we do is we unblindfold the people. You know what? I got it opposite. We start off with the person in the middle being blindfolded, and the people on the outskirts are not blindfolded. You know what? I don't even remember how. I'm forgetting it. The bottom line is this. Here's what I can't. I'm trying to remember the exercise because it's been so long, and it is. There's a chapter in the book that I wrote that explains the exercise. But the bottom line is this: that there's the only rule, and I said this to them over and over and over again, is you can't talk to each other. You can take the belt off and walk over to the $100 bill and pick it up. They finally eventually get it, right? And those are those imaginary, the yellow ropes are just the imaginary tethers that keep you from having your dreams. It's like how many times do you see something that you want and there's nothing keeping you from going and getting it? It's just those conversations that keep you. Like,
Yeah.
let's say you're single and you want to be dating somebody or in a relationship and you see a woman that you really are attracted to and you don't go talk to that person because of the conversations you're having. That's an imaginary yellow rope. It's a tether.
There's another part in your book, and it's really amazing when we're talking about pursuing the dreams, the ideas that we have, the visions that we have. In Better Than Beach Money, there's a chapter in there where you're talking about the gentleman he has an idea about getting water to a village.
Yes.
He's telling people about his idea. He comes up with this grand idea about how the village can benefit. And he's trying to convince people about his idea. And he's got so many naysayers out there telling him his idea is crazy. It will never work. I mean, even his wife gets frustrated at him. How important is it, one, for us to stay focused on the vision that we have, and two, the associations around us and how that impacts or can impact what we're doing?
Yeah. First of all, what other people tell you really has no bearing on your success unless you buy into it. It's like if you believe something but if you question something, it's real easy to change your stance when other people are telling you that's not a great idea. But when you see an opportunity that you believe could help a lot of people create some freedom for you, it doesn't matter what other people say. Every successful entrepreneur has learned not to make their business decisions based on what other people are saying. It's like what you believe. So the story you're telling, this guy has this dream to, he's carrying buckets of water up the hill and providing this village that has been experiencing a big drought. He's carrying these buckets up the hill and providing them with some water, but it was not nearly enough to provide for the village. And then one day he decides he's going to build a pipeline. And he knew that it was going to take a couple of years and it was going to cost a lot of money. And there wasn't going to be any benefit for a couple of years until the pipeline was completely built. And he goes and starts to do that. And actually what happens is one day he's hauling buckets and he trips and falls and he injures himself and he's laying on the couch. And that's when he decides he needs to build a pipeline. And, he was charging for those buckets of water, and he realized he could lower the price significantly on the water if he could get more water up there because there was a stream at the bottom of the hill. And so he builds the pipeline and everybody's telling him it's a stupid idea. It's never going to work. You're never going to, and then ultimately he ends up completing the pipeline. Water's flowing to the village. The village is happy. He and his wife are charged. I don't know what they're charging per gallon of water, but it's significantly less. But he's making $30,000 a month because there's so much water flowing into that village, and there's so much benefit to the village. It's thriving. He and his wife are then on the beach and still making money. So that's really the moral of the story. And any business that you build that's going to provide you with freedom is going to require some type of leverage.
Right. And I think in some form or fashion, whether it doesn't matter where you are, whether, it's in the States or a third world country or anything like that. When you mention freedom to somebody, of course, everybody's got their own definition of freedom, but I'm of the belief that everybody wants to experience some freedom, whatever that freedom is to them. They want to know what it's like to be able to do the things they want to do when they want to do it. And we're fortunate where we're at right now. We can do a lot of those things. A lot of places aren't like that. Um, one of the things when we did the introduction to you and knowing you personally, one of the things that you are very big about is gratitude and expressing gratitude. How important is that not only to you, but how important is that now to the world and what's missing in the society today, and how important gratitude really is right now?
Well, I heard Tony Robbins say one time that no matter what, no matter, you can't focus on your problems and be grateful at the same time. And whenever we have problems, we tend to really we go inside, we go into our heads, and we start feeling sorry for ourselves and all that. And any doubt that you have can be, as soon as you shift to gratitude is about other people. And so, and in business, being present with people and being grateful for where you are, grateful for what you're learning, grateful for what you're experiencing, grateful for the opportunity, all of that can help you get through any challenge or issue that you're faced with. And especially in today's world, there's so many people. We're living in a disconnected world. Social media, we've got our faces buried in our phones and in our computers. We're not talking to each other. And when we don't talk to each other, then, people make up stories and there's a lot of division. But as soon as you put yourself in a place of gratitude, then everything shifts.
What are
And
what are
so we
Go ahead.
we teach that. We teach
So
that.
what are some ways that people can express gratitude? Give them some examples on what they can do. And if you want to, and this is the perfect time to talk about what it is you do, because I think it's very important. You offer the organization, the group, the company that you're with now has such value in today's world that is missing, because I know how important the personal connection is to you, personally connect with people, and through what you're involved with now offers that. Can you go ahead and talk about that?
Yeah, the name of our company is Promptings. We're 21 years old. We're actually the largest customer of the U.S. Post Office. Our company, Send Out Cards, is the name of the technology where you can send out physical, personalized cards in the mail from an app on your phone or from your computer. You can express gratitude on a daily basis, not just feel gratitude. It's about like um, being in gratitude. That's like you're journaling, being present, really being intentional about what's going on in your life that you can be thankful for, but then sending that gratitude out so that it can be experienced and felt by others. So our platform, the Send Out Cards platform, Promptings is the name of the company, Promptings. The Send Out Cards platform allows you to send that out. So like we teach people to get into a state of gratitude every day by being in gratitude and then thinking of one or two or three people that you're grateful for or something that you're grateful for, and then send a card and do that from your phone or from your computer. You can add pictures. Sending gifts is a phenomenal way of expressing gratitude, and we've got hundreds of gifts that you can send as well. And every day, every morning, I get up and I spend 10 or 15 minutes and I send out two or three cards to somebody that I'm grateful for. So sometimes I'm scrolling through my phone to figure out who that is. Sometimes I'm scrolling through my text messages. Sometimes I'm scrolling social media and I see a photo. Maybe one of my friends just recently lost her dog and her dog was her best friend. And so I'll take a picture from the social media and I'll drop it into my phone and then I'll put it on the front of a card and type a nice message, just letting her know that I'm thinking about her. So or grandma turns 100 and they're celebrating and there's some great pictures. They don't have those pictures in their hands. It's in cyberspace. It's gone like within a couple of days. But if I can send it to somebody, they're going to appreciate that. We have a saying, prompting send out cards is because emails don't make the refrigerator. And today you can do digital cards as well as printed cards. And a digital card you can send with gift cards. We've got digital gift cards like Sephora makeup and Lowe's hardware stores and Starbucks and all these different companies, and you can drop a digital gift card with a personalized card that you say some nice things in, send it to somebody's phone, but you can also send it as a printed card.
And there are a lot of people, and I was just thinking about this as we're talking about this. Let's say you want to go out and you want to buy a brand new truck and you want to buy a red truck. Well, all of a sudden, because you've got it in your mind, what do? You start seeing red trucks everywhere you go. They were always there. You just never noticed them because they weren't at the forefront of
Right,
your mind. And the same
right.
thing goes with gratitude. I can tell you, in the last month, just because speaking gratitude, just talking about it, how many times people have referred to the word gratitude, because it stands out, because it's in the forefront of my mind, gratitude. So now I'm picking up in conversations where people are talking about, well, you have to share gratitude or do this. I recently interviewed, his name was John Walker, his name's Jaywalk, and asking him some final words on his interview. And we were talking about what people can do when they're not feeling their best, when they're feeling down. And his suggestion was, he called it rack up 10 points every day. And that was 10 random acts of kindness every day. Gratitude. And he really talked about gratitude. And so it's really important, I think, in today's society that we take the time, especially when we're not feeling, because we're feeling down. If we can start expressing our gratitude when we're feeling down, it actually has the reverse effect on us. We start to
Yeah.
get that feeling back to us. Jordan, you've been through a lot. You've been very successful in your business. You've gone through a lot of businesses to get to where you're at. You're very personable. I want to kind of shift a little bit, because not too long ago, if you don't mind, you were involved in an incident that really, in a matter of 15 to 20 seconds, could have changed your whole life. And
Mhm.
that, of course, was you were involved in a helicopter crash, and thank the good Lord and all that you're with us today. Can you talk a little bit about that, and what kind of an impact after that did that have on you in your life?
Yeah, I was definitely given a second chance. I decided, first of all, it was believe it or not, it was 6 years ago. It
Wow,
wasn't that
6 years
recent. Yeah, it
ago.
was 6 years ago. And I've been flying helicopters for 10 years. At the age of 57 years old, I decided to get my helicopter pilot's license. And that was probably the hardest thing I've ever learned to do in my life. I actually was out flying this morning I flew for an hour and 10 minutes this morning over Vegas with a friend. We had a great time. And but I flew for a few years, and then I decided I wanted my own helicopter, and I tracked down the helicopter that I wanted. I hired a broker, and it was a very extensive process. I mean, we had to disassemble the helicopter, ship it across the country, put it all back together, and then it had to be inspected, FAA inspected and all of that. I had to upgrade some things in order to make it compliant, and because it was an older helicopter that had been restored. And so all those things, and I finally soloed in it. I went down to Texas to get San Antonio, Texas, to get some specialized training. 5 times I went down there. Finally, I flew in my helicopter, my own helicopter, after 6 months of owning it, and I soloed in it one time. And I met a guy that a friend of mine knew, and I knew this guy for now 6 months. He knew him for 5 years. The guy's name's Eric Rasmussen, and we hung out, and I liked the guy. And my understanding from our conversations and conversations with other friends is that he was a commercial pilot that had been flying for many years and had thousands of hours, way more hours than I did. And one day I said to Eric, let's go flying in my helicopter. He told me he had 3 helicopters just like mine that were leased out. And then he also owned a couple other helicopters, and he had a maintenance facility and all kinds of stuff. He owned a golf course and a fixed base operation, FBO for aircraft, and all the stuff he owned. And one day I said, let's go flying in my helicopter. And we got in there, and I picked it up off the ramp, and we were hovering in a fairly uh, confined area, not dangerous, but confined. There was a 150-gallon fuel tank kind of next to us, and a small fuel cart they were both full, and there was a parking lot behind us and a wall and all this. And I'm hovering the helicopter, and because he had so many hours and he owned helicopters just like mine, I said, "Do you want the controls?" This is common that helicopter pilots pass the controls back and forth to each other. Even in an airplane, you'll do that. You pass the controls back and forth. It's got dual controls. And I said, "Eric, you want the controls?" And he said, "Yes." And I turned the controls over to him. And within a quarter of a second, the helicopter tipped back and the tail spun around. The tail hit the 150-gallon fuel tank. Now it happened in a quarter of a second. So all this happened without me knowing it while we were in the helicopter. I just knew that I was going to be dead. Because if your main rotor hits something while you're in the air, you're dead. The helicopter just explodes into a million pieces and shatters into a million pieces. Well, I didn't know at the time that we had pierced a 150-gallon fuel tank that was full and ripped apart the smaller fuel cart. And we ended up upside down with a wreckage on top of us. And the guy that I flew with today, actually, Brian, he came out immediately from the facility and he pulled both of us from the wreckage and then he was gone. Long story short, after a 5-week investigation, the FAA contacted me. I mean, the news choppers were overhead, the ambulances were there, the FAA was there, the NTSB was there, all of it. And after 5 weeks, they never got a chance to interview Eric. He was running from them and he was lying to me. And they finally contacted me and they said, "How well do you know this guy?" And I said, "I've known him for 6 months. I know he owns helicopters. I know he flies every week." And they say, "Jordan, he's never flown a helicopter in his life. He doesn't own any helicopters." The FAA tells me
Wow.
this. So I turned the controls over to a guy that had never flown a helicopter. And he had been lying to me and my friend and all the pilots and all the mechanics. They all knew him. He'd been lying to us for many months. Even his live-in girlfriend knew him as a commercial pilot. So they did a 1-year investigation, and after a year, they contacted me and they said, "We're arresting him tomorrow." And tomorrow happened to be the day the pandemic shut everything down.
Wow.
So they shut down everything, the FAA offices, all of it, and he didn't get arrested. And a few couple years went by, and they just basically cleared the desk and let him go. And he owns
Wow.
nothing, so it wasn't like I could go after him for anything. It ended up costing me about $250,000 after insurance.
But what
And we both walked away from the wreckage pretty much unscathed. I mean, I had a cut on my foot that was 8 stitches and some blood, uh, but we didn't. We both of us should have been killed instantly, and neither of us were even scraped up much.
Well, I'll tell you what, we'll make sure that there's a link to the video. But when you watch the video, I was just watching this, and I'm watching it as the helicopter is taking off, and I'm kind of going trying to in my mind, I'm trying to think what you would be thinking, like, oh, this is going to be fun, we're going to get ready, we're going to have a good day, and to see that how fast everything changed, and like you said, how
Yeah,
quickly when you watch the blades hit the fuel tank and the fact that there was no
there
spark,
was
there was
not a
no
spark,
explosion.
no spark. If there had been one spark, because when the helicopter came to a stop, my face was in fuel, a huge fuel field underneath us. My face was in the fuel when on concrete that was over 100 degrees. Yeah.
So afterwards, now that you look back at that, you look back at what happened, what could have happened, did that at all did it kind of change how you looked at life, and like, man, it could have been gone just like that? Did you have any kind of perspective afterwards?
You know what? I know a lot of people do when they have a situation like that. They see life differently. I've always, I'm very present. I'm very present with everything that I do. And I appreciate every moment of life, even before the crash. Like I'm very cognizant of the fact that, that our physical life that we're living here is limited, very, very limited, and that, every moment is a gift. I've always been there. So what what it did do most of all was it made me appreciate flying helicopters more because in that moment when I stepped out of the wreckage, my first thought was, what if I get in trouble for this, and what if I never get to fly a helicopter again? Because I was pilot in command. I turned the helicopter over to him. And the only reason I didn't get in trouble is because they eventually got his written uh, report, and he admitted that he'd been lying to me and everybody else. If somebody had been killed, my life would have been over. Like if he had been killed and I lived, his family would have sued me, and I would that would have wrecked my life. If somebody there were parts of the helicopter were flying in all different directions at the speed of a bullet in all different directions, and if some there were people everywhere, if somebody had been hit and injured or killed, my life would have been over. So I was very appreciative that nothing serious did happen, and that I'm still able to fly. I got back in the helicopter after about 4 months, and I've
That's
flown
amazing.
over a
Yeah,
hundred
no,
times since then.
and you're right. A lot of people would have taken that what happened and they would have walked away and said, "Well, I'm not going to do that again." But you
Right.
didn't. It's like falling off a bicycle, but a much different scale, but
Yeah.
but uh but you did, and you got back in it, and which is great. But it also goes to show that your determination to not
Yeah.
let adversity keep you from doing what you wanted to do in your dream. You wanted to fly a helicopter, and you did not let that stop you. And how ironic is
Right.
that so many times in life that we have a crash in life and we think life is over, when reality, as you hear this often, it's just a season of life and you can go on from it. And so it's really ironic how the two are, that it's you were just able to continue to pursue your dreams. This interview.
It was a big disruption and a big inconvenience and very painful in many ways. So, and I did have to overcome a lot of things, some PTSD and yeah.
Yeah, I could only imagine the PTSD that you would come from it. But the fact is that you got back in the helicopter, you went back up, and today you're still flying and you're enjoying what you're doing.
Oh yeah.
So we've gone through a lot. We've covered a lot. There's a lot more in Beach Money and Better Than Beach Money. We could go on forever. But as we get ready to wrap things up, there's a lot of people out there today that are looking for hope. They're looking for inspiration. Like the
Yeah.
mantra we have here: rise, inspire, and overcome. And you've definitely done all of that. If there's somebody out there right now who's really just trying to look for a direction, they're feeling like they can no longer go on. They're just completely exhausted. And what kind of words of encouragement would you have for them? And it could be about beach money, it could be about money, but in life in general, how do you take all of that you've learned over the years you've been successful and instill in somebody else that they can continue on and that there is hope?
Yeah. First of all, stop beating yourself up. Everybody does that. You're going to always beat yourself up, but then realize that you're doing it and step back from it. And then understand that every setback that you have, no matter how difficult, there's a lesson in it, and start teaching that lesson to other people that it could help. Get outside of yourself. So when you're experiencing difficulties and maybe it's tragedy, maybe it's depression, maybe it's doubt, maybe it's just some type of a financial setback, whatever it is, when that happens, learn something from it and then teach other people what you learn. That gets you out of yourself. And then look for just like you were talking about the um, uh, being grateful every day 10 times. What was it was RAK, random acts of
Rack up
kindness.
rack up
Random
10
acts of
points every
kindness.
day.
Yeah. Put yourself in a state of mind where you're going to um, do positive things for other people every day, and get outside of yourself, because it's usually when you're in that space where you're feeling discouraged, which is really what you're asking about, the people that get discouraged. It's usually we're so focused internally that we can't possibly break out of it unless we get aware of it and intentional. There's two things that I think somebody needs um, to be aware of in transforming any situation. The first is a decision, and the second is intentionality. So make a decision that you're going to get outside of yourself and focus on serving other people. That's a decision. And then be intentional about it, meaning that be aware of it every day and take action on something every day. Be aware of it, because what happens is, we all day long, every day we're learning stuff, we think of it and it goes away, and then we learn something else and we think of it and it goes away. But it's about that intentionality. So it's like saying every single day I'm going to send out 2 cards to people that I appreciate. or every single day, I'm going to do 3 random acts of kindness, or that's being intentional. So it's not just a haphazard thing that you're only going to do if you think about it. It's something that you're going to be aware of every day that you're actually going to do. And by doing that, by getting out of your own head and doing serving other people, your world is going to get better and their world is going to get better. You're going to expand your influence on in the world and with other people.
Yeah, and along the same lines, you can't think positive and negative at the same time. You can't do
Right,
both at the same time.
right,
And
right.
so and both take the same amount of energy. You can put your energy towards positivity, you can take your energy and put it towards negativity, but at the end of the day, you get to decide which direction that energy goes.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So this has been absolutely great. Two things I want to talk about or just mention real quick about you, Jordan. And that is, first of all, how personable you are, how relatable you are, and how important that is. Of course, when people see you, you're you. You're not somebody who's, you're not out of reach or something. If you were walking down the street, you wouldn't know. You're just an everyday guy, which is great, which is fantastic. And the reason why I say this, because I want to bring two things to point. I remember it's actually been almost 10 years ago this year. I remember one time I was coming to Vegas and I reached out to you and I said, "Hey, Jordan, I'm going to be in town. It'd be kind of cool to meet up with you." And what was really cool about Jordan, everybody, is that, a lot of people would go, "Yeah, that's great, but I'm going to be busy. I've got things going on. It'd be nice to see you, but whatever." But what Jordan did, what really stands out in my mind, was he invited me to go with him, and he didn't have to. All the people, he didn't have to, but he invited me. This was on a Monday night, if I remember correctly. There was a Monday night when the Vegas shows are dark, and it was a fundraiser night when everybody kind
Yes.
of comes together and they raise money for a certain charity. But what was really unique about that, Jordan, what I really appreciated is the fact that you welcomed me and you said, "Why don't you come with me?" And so you invited me in this, and to just that tells a lot about the person that you are, um, and how people can learn a lot from you
Thank you.
about just being human, just being a human, nothing else. Just be a compassionate human. And so we really got to enjoy that night. I got to experience some time with you. We got to go into the big whatever the big Ferris wheel thing is that they have
Oh,
out
the
there.
the high roller down the
Yeah, the
street.
high the
Yeah.
high roller was really cool. Got to spend some time with you. But I remember one other time that I was at the airport and I remember I was dropping my daughter off and I never used the valet. Never use it. And this one time I said, "I'm only going to be a few minutes. It's not going to cost very much. I'm just going to use the valet." So go in, drop her off, and I come out, and who's there? Of all the people in Las Vegas, I ran into Jordan Adler
Yeah.
in the airport, and it was really great. So, Jordan, it's been fantastic to learn from you, to
Thank you,
hear from you.
Dustin.
You're a great person to know. I'm lucky and fortunate to be able to call you a friend and reach out to you occasionally, and you reach out to me occasionally. Are there any last words that you would like to leave with our listening audience before we get out of here?
Yeah, just no, I don't, we talked about a lot of things and I just want to encourage you and thank you for being part of this. And Destin, I want to thank you for inviting me to be to your show.
All right, Jordan, thank you very much again for joining us. And we want to thank you for joining us as well on this episode of Ego Freedom Presents. Please be sure to drop a comment below if there is something that resonated with you and share this episode with someone who might be going through a lot and that can benefit from some of the words of advice that we heard from Jordan. And also be sure to like and subscribe to our channel. Until next time, I'm Destin Rogers. Thank you much for joining us on Eagle Freedom Presents.